and welcome back to the Forgive Yourself podcast. I'm Brenda Reese. Now, for a few episodes here, we're talking about emotional freedom. And in the last episode, we talked about freedom to stop leaving yourself behind. We talked about the quiet ways we abandon ourselves, saying yes when we mean no, pretending we're fine when we're not, making someone else's comfort more important than our own truth. Now, today, I want to take that conversation a step further, because once you begin coming back home, like I say to yourself, something else shows up. Guilt. You might begin to tell the truth, set a boundary, choose to rest, maybe again stop over-explaining, make decisions that honor your peace, your body, your needs, your life. And then almost immediately, guilt more than likely comes in. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you are doing something unfamiliar. That is what we're talking about today, the freedom to choose without guilt, not the freedom to never feel guilt. That's an important distinction. Emotional freedom does not mean that guilt never shows up. It means guilt is no longer the leader of your life. Guilt may be present, but guilt does not get to make every darn decision like we've lived most of our life. Fear may be present, but fear doesn't get to take the wheel, right? Someone else may be disappointed, but their disappointment does not automatically mean you have done something wrong. And for many of us, that is a completely new way of living. So let's talk about why guilt can feel so powerful. For many women, especially those of us who spent years being the responsible one, the caretaker, the peacemaker, or the emotional manager for everyone around us, guilt has been a part of our operating system. It has been there for so long that we don't even question it. We feel guilt and we respond. So, we feel guilty, so we say yes. We feel guilty, so we explain. We feel guilty, so we soften the boundary or let go of the boundary completely. We feel guilty, so we take responsibility for something that's not ours. We feel guilty, so we give more. We feel guilty, so we stay longer. Or we feel guilty, so we make ourselves available when we are depleted. Therefore, we leave ourselves behind. And often this happens really fast. Before we even have time to pause, we are apologizing, justifying, fixing, rescuing, or trying to make sure no one is upset with us. Right? For many of us, guilt became connected to love. Somewhere along the way, we may have learned that if someone was upset, we were responsible. If someone was disappointed, we had failed. If someone was uncomfortable, we needed to fix it. And if someone pulled away, we needed to chase them. That was all of my relationships. Okay. And if someone did not understand us, we needed to explain until they did. That was my other MO, right? So when we begin choosing ourselves, our nervous system may not recognize it as freedom at first. It may recognize it as risk. It may feel very challenging. It may feel super uncomfortable. It may feel like we're doing something wrong, even when what we are really doing is telling our truth. That is why guilt can feel so confusing, because sometimes guilt is pretty darn wise. And sometimes guilt is old programming. Okay? So sometimes guilt is asking us to repair something. And sometimes guilt is asking us to return to a role that we have outgrown. So here we need discernment. There is a difference between healthy guilt and old pattern guilt. Healthy guilt is connected to your values. Healthy guilt may arise when you have done or said something that is not aligned with who you want to be. Maybe you were unkind. Maybe you were dishonest. Maybe you crossed someone else's boundary. Maybe you avoided a conversation and someone else was hurt by it. And maybe you acted from fear, defensiveness, resentment, or reactivity. Healthy guilt says something here needs attention. Healthy guilt actually invites repair. It invites honesty. It invites responsibility. It invites a return to integrity. Healthy guilt does not shame you. It guides you. Now, old pattern guilt is different. Old pattern guilt often shows up when you are breaking an old role. So it can show up when you stop being available in the way people are used to. It shows up when you no longer say yes automatically. It shows up when you let someone else be responsible for their own feelings. Ooh, yes, is that uncomfortable? It shows up when you tell the truth instead of performing out of just okayness, right? It shows up when you choose rest. And it can show up when you stop carrying what was never yours to carry. I'm raising my hand on that one. Now, old pattern guilt says, go back. Go back to being easy, to being agreeable, to being available, being the one who makes everything okay. Go back to the version of yourself that no one questioned. But emotional freedom asks a different question. It asks, is this guilt asking me to repair something, or is it asking me to abandon myself? Ooh, that's a juicy one. Because not all guilt deserves your obedience. Some guilt deserves your compassion. Some guilt deserves your attention. And some guilt deserves your curiosity. But not all guilt deserves control over your choices. Now, one of the things I see often is that guilt can show up most strongly when a woman is actually growing. Okay? You may finally speak honestly. You may finally say no. You may finally admit what you need. You may finally stop explaining everything. Maybe you finally let someone be disappointed, or you may finally choose yourself in a situation where you used to sacrifice yourself. And instead of feeling instantly free, you feel guilty. Then she starts questioning herself. You start questioning yourself. Was I too harsh? Was I selfish? Should I have said it differently? Maybe I should have done it anyway. Maybe it was not that big of a deal. Maybe I'm making things harder than they need to be. Maybe I should just take it back. Okay. I want you to take a moment here. Because if you do not understand what is happening and that in those times, you may interpret guilt as a sign that you made the wrong choice. But sometimes guilt is simply a sign that you made a new choice, a choice your old self would not have made, a choice your old patterns do not even recognize yet, a choice that honors the woman you are becoming, not only the woman you had to be. Now, this is the emotional freedom work. It's not only making the decision, it's staying with yourself after the decision. It is not only saying no, it is allowing your no to be enough. Oh my God. I remember when I practiced that. Oh, I think I was sweating. I swear I must have been sweating. It is not only about choosing yourself, and it is not punishing yourself afterward for choosing yourself, right? So there are so many stories here that I could tell and that my clients have gone through, because it's really, again, it's something we're trained into. We're trained into feeling guilty. We're trained into, like I talked about last time, about the wiring and the hormonal changes that take place for girls versus boys, and going through puberty and what we learn through most of our lives to be agreeable, to be nice, to be kind, to not speak up. And then we really want to speak up, but we feel guilty about it. We don't know what to do. And because a lot of us, like I said before, we're not taught boundaries. We're not taught that our anger is okay. We're not taught that our anger could mean that our boundaries are being crossed. And maybe we don't even realize the boundaries, but our body does. And so what I want you to really realize is that you can look back at your whole story. I can look back at my life, and I lived in fear and I lived in guilt. I was afraid to make mistakes. I thought I was a mistake. I think I didn't matter. I felt guilty for speaking my mind, so I wouldn't say anything at all. And then I'd be resentful. And then my body finally started talking to me loudly. I really believe this neck fusion, back fusion, brain tumor that I went through years ago really was a signal to me. It really was. I learned, my nervous system has been in fight or flight my whole life, and my nerves started to react. I'm on fire. That's what I believe. Because I've held the anger, I've held the resentment, no wonder I teach forgiveness, right? Yeah. Ooh, we turn our pain into purpose because I needed it. I needed this self-forgiveness. I needed to know that there's a different way to look at things, that I can make a different choice, and that choosing me was okay. In fact, it was better than okay. If I didn't choose me first, nothing else would go right. So what I can see now is that the guilt that I carried was not always that I did something wrong. Sometimes guilt was telling me I'd stepped outside of an old role. It was uncomfortable, yeah, but it was also honest. And I had to learn how to stay with myself instead of running back to that familiar version of me who knew how to keep everyone else comfortable. So as you know, it's an experiential podcast. So I want to offer you a few reflection questions. Okay. So I'd like you to listen in, and then I'm going to encourage you to go back and answer them. Okay. Because there's about 3 or 4 of them. So the first question is this guilt asking me to repair something, or is it asking me to return to an old role? So when you start to feel guilty, because we all have the feeling of feeling guilty, we get flushed, we'll start to over explain, we start to get uncomfortable, right? So when you have those feelings, ask yourself, oh, is this guilt asking me to repair something? Like I've done something that I need. It's an honest guilt. Or is it an old pattern guilt? Right? That's an important question. Because remember, if repair is needed, you can repair, you can apologize, you can take responsibility, you can clean up your side of the street, as they used to say in AA. But if guilt is asking you, right, to return to an old role, now that's a different story. Then the work is not to obey that guilt. The work is to comfort the part of you that feels afraid to choose differently. That's when we can love on ourselves and bring in compassion to the parts of us. I got to do that with my 40 something. And it was mainly late 30s, 40s that when I went through that third marriage and divorce. And I got to go back and love it and love her. And that helped to calm my nervous system. It really works. Now, the second question is, whose disappointment am I trying to avoid? This one's revealing because often we are not only making decisions from our own truth, we are making decisions based on who might be disappointed, who might be upset, who might pull away, who might question us. That was mine. Who might think we are selfish, who might no longer see us the same way. And again, we want to be thoughtful. We want to be loving. We want to be responsible. But there is a difference between being thoughtful and being controlled by the possibility of disappointment. Yeah, let that one sink in. There is a difference between being thoughtful and being controlled by the possibility of disappointment. Now, the third question is, what am I afraid will happen if I honor myself? This is kind of big. No, this is big. What am I afraid will happen if I honor myself? Maybe you are afraid someone will leave. I was. Maybe you are afraid someone will judge you. Oh my God, that ran most of my life. Maybe you are afraid that they will be angry. That was another one. Maybe you are afraid that you're going to be seen as difficult. Maybe you are afraid you will regret it. Or maybe you are afraid you will no longer know who you are if you stop being the one who always gives. Let's take a breath on that. And I want you to know that I just want you to take your time with this, okay? This is important. This is just getting to know you and the parts of you that did what she did to have to survive. Now, the final question is, what would I choose if guilt was not leading? Not what would I choose if I did not care? Not what would I choose if no one mattered? What would I choose if guilt was not the leader? Gosh, what would I choose from clarity, from self-respect, from peace? What would I choose from self-trust? Ooh, I love that. What would I choose from the woman I am becoming? Now, these are not questions I want you to answer immediately. They're questions to live with, to have you resonate with, to marinate in. They are questions that will help you come home to yourself. So let's talk about a simple practice for the next time guilt comes up around a choice that you have. I want you to pause and ask 3 things. The first one is, what am I feeling? Name it honestly. Maybe it feels guilt, fear. Maybe there's sadness, anxiety, grief, right? Or old conditioning. Gosh, this feels familiar. A lot of us know that. A lot of us knows when we take a moment, it feels familiar. Now, naming it helps you create space between the feeling and the decision. So that's important. That's the first one. The second question is, what is mine to own? Now, this is where you're going to look for clean responsibility. Did I act out of alignment or did I act out of harm? Did I cause harm? Is there something to repair maybe, or something I need to clarify? Is there a kinder way to communicate? Is there a part that truly belongs to me? That's taking responsibility, and that brings you freedom. It's liberating. Because when we blame someone else, we give them our power. Now, the third question is, what is not mine to carry? This is big. This is where emotional freedom begins. Because it may not be yours to carry someone else's disappointment. It may not be yours to carry their discomfort with your growth. It may not be yours to carry their resistance to your boundary. And it may not be yours to carry the role they assigned to you. That happens in families a lot. And it may not be yours to carry the guilt of no longer being who they expected you to be. Remember, expectations cause suffering. Okay. So the practice is, what am I feeling? Number 1. Number 2, what is mine to own? And number 3 is, what is not mine to carry? This is a really beautiful way to come back to yourself without ignoring your emotions and without letting them take over either. Okay. So as we close today, I want to remind you of this. Emotional freedom is not the absence of guilt. It is the ability to feel guilt without letting it become the leader of your life. It is the ability to pause before returning to an old role. And it is the ability to ask whether guilt is guiding you toward repair or it's pulling you back into self-abandonment. It is the ability to make a self-honoring choice, even when that choice feels uncomfortable. And it's the ability to disappoint someone and still know you can be loving. It's the ability to tell the truth without making someone else's reaction the final authority over your life. So this week, I invite you to notice where guilt shows up. We're not going to judge it. We're not pushing it away. We're not going to immediately obey it. We're just going to notice it. We're going to pause. And we're going to ask, is this guilt asking me to repair something? Or is this guilt asking me to return to an old role? What is mine to own? What is not mine to carry? What would I choose if guilt was not leading? Okay, I know there's a lot of questions in this, but I want you to sit with those questions. I want them, just let them open up something within you. Let them gently guide you back to your heart, because you are allowed to choose from truth. You are allowed to choose from clarity. You are allowed to choose from self-trust, and you are allowed to choose from peace, even if you haven't known it before. And you are allowed to forgive yourself for all the times you did not know that yet. Oh, my friend, thank you for this time together today. I really, really cherish our time together, and I really mean that. If this episode spoke to you, if you feel it, please share it. Especially someone learning how to choose herself without letting guilt take over. And always remember, my friend, you matter. You really do. And until next time, take care. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy it, would you do me a favor and share this episode and then follow us on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss one episode of the Forgive Yourself podcast, where every Friday you will get tips, tools, and stories so that you can turn your pain into peace. Take care.